Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, ich darf Sie ganz, ganz herzlich begrüßen zur heutigen Webkonferenz. Ladies and gentlemen, I may say hello to our today's web conference. Wir haben Teilnehmer aus Deutschland, wo es momentan 8 Uhr ist. Wir haben Teilnehmer aus Australien, wo es zumindest in Sydney 4 Uhr ist. We have participants out of Germany, where it's at present 8 a.m. in the morning, and as well participants out of Australia. It's at present 4 p.m. in Sydney. Depends on Perth, of course, it's a little bit earlier. Wie üblich wird Herr Caldwell gleich etwa 20 Minuten durch die Präsentation gehen. Like always, Mr. Caldwell will give a short presentation, roughly 20 minutes. Sie haben im Anschluss die Möglichkeit, Fragen zu stellen via eines kleinen Chats. You have afterwards the possibility to ask questions via a little chat. Sie finden das Chat unten rechts im Bildschirm. Ist ein bisschen schwierig zu sehen. You find the chat at the right bottom, and it's a little bit hard to see. Und dann darf ich übergeben an Richard. Richard, may I ask you to start?
Certainly, Eva. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon also, and thank you to all participants who are online, particularly those signing in Europe and the UK, where I know it's quite early, and it's also the holiday season, so I'm quite delighted to see such a high level of participation today. So, as Eva said, we'll run through the normal schedule. A brief presentation followed by questions, and if we don't have enough time to take all questions, then of course we'll endeavour to take those questions offline and respond to individual listeners directly through email. So you will see many examples and lots of evidence of our rebranding through this presentation. I hope you like it. It's certainly been quite a hit with all our various stakeholders. It's really just a means to an end, as we all know, but it really has eliminated some of the confusion we've had in the past 2 or 3 years in particular as we've moved on to the new technology and yet remained as Greatcell, and that's caused some confusion, particularly to new shareholders. So with the new, more generic Greatcell Solar, I think it'll be much easier to understand what the real essence of the company is as a high-tech global solar company. So if we could move to page 2, please, Eva. Mm-hmm. So today we'll run through the commercialization schedule, corporate and financial, as it relates in particular to funding and capital raising, grants and so forth. Then on to R&D in particular in relation to the quarterly milestone. Then on to manufacturing collaboration, which of course really addresses our multiple partnerships across R&D and of course future commercialization plans. And finally to the quarterly financials. And of course for this quarter it's the end of the financial year, so we may be able to reflect on some of the metrics that we've achieved over the last 12 months. Page 3, please, Eva.
Yes.
So just to focus on highlights, of course, the rebranding has been a highlight. We've recast our commercialization schedule, and I'll be able to touch on a little more of the reasoning behind that. We've announced a $5 million share purchase plan, which also I think needs some further clarification because there are a number of reasons driving that. Then on to the TAB milestone, which of course is very important because the core of the company is really how we're going with our technology at the cell level and translating that into larger and larger devices. Also then on to the MOU with Jinko, an update on the CRC-P grant, which is really in full swing now, and of course, as I said, touching on the annual financials, but also the R&D rebate, which is always a highlight of our late August, early September cash receipts. So on to page 4, please, Eva.
Yes.
And then 5.
Yes.
So we have a new commercialization schedule. I hope it's not of great alarm to our shareholders. The board thought it was a good time to have another look at the schedule. It really does move in annual increments, and I think by moving everything 1 year to the right, we've been very conservative, and I think at some stage, at a later date, we'll be able to give some fine-tuning around that, and perhaps it may be as little as 6 months in relation to glass, and in relation to metal, it may actually be no movement at all to the right, and in fact, we may be able to condense the prototyping phase in metal into 1 year rather than 2, given the state-of-the-art resources that we have available to us in our Alliance collaboration. So we're being conservative, and there are some strong drivers behind this beyond our control. I can just touch on those briefly, but we're a company that's used to buying a lot of our equipment off the shelf, but under the advice of VDL ETG, we've now moved to a more sophisticated equipment program where a lot of the equipment is bespoke and and not available off the shelf. So a lot of that new equipment proposed for the MAD program will need to be made to order, and that lead time is about 6 months. So some of those orders have commenced, and a number of those orders we expect to commence over the next month or two when we have a better understanding of our funding position and also our grant position. Another reason why we've had some delays beyond our control is that we're now moving to larger devices, and our partners need to really move with us, and our partners are also going through a period of adjustment. For example, we're now testing devices which are much larger, and to that extent we've had to adopt new light sources. We've had to adopt larger testing chambers. Again, these sorts of pieces of equipment are sometimes have long lead times in orders or are bespoke. So, for example, there's been quite a lot of planning and discussion with CSIRO for CSIRO to move along with us in our program. And as you know, CSIRO is not only a preferred partner of ours and us of them, but is also a partner in our CRC-P grant program of $2.5 million. So we're working together, but we don't always work totally in sync, and we need to match this re-equipping with our respective budgets. And as I say, it's a reasonably conservative schedule that we've now provided for the market, and hopefully at some time down the track, once we've re-equipped and we're into more advanced testing and moved on to MAD, particularly in relation to our metals program, we should be able to at no worse confirm the current schedule and at best perhaps improve upon it. It also makes, to some extent, it makes sense when I explain it to you in terms of what we're doing at the moment in scaling from modules to mini-MAD scale. That is in fact a 30 times scaling, whereas the scaling from mini-MAD to MAD is only roughly a 2 times scaling. So a lot of the emphasis, a lot of the technical challenges are really what we are thoroughly involved in at the moment, and it's pleasing to report we're making excellent progress with our mini-MAD panels. So no time's been wasted, despite the fact that we're moving this to the right by 1 year. And in fact, what our experience has told us in recent months is that more time needs to be spent on the mini-MAD program and perhaps less on the MAD program, and that translation in scale will be easier than we initially anticipated. So exciting times for the company and a major de-risking program in full swing. Next slide, please, Eva.
Yes, 6.
And then again.
And 7, yes.
Indeed. So on to corporate and financial. So we just to give a little more colour around the inquiry we had from the stock exchange after our last quarterly announcement. We are tending to keep our cash balances relatively low at the moment to minimise shareholder dilution. We have a number of different grant applications in full swing, and we also have a number of long-term discussions which we've fully informed the market about in terms of our involvement in China, for example, which we believe over time will give a lot more confidence about the commercialisation prospects of our technology. So we're keeping our cash balances relatively low. So we provided our answer to the stock exchange, and they were more than satisfied with that. We subsequently released this 4C, and the stock exchange have not made any comment in relation to that. So we're very confident that we're providing the market with as much information available to us at the moment, and managing the company's finances very carefully. Also touch on our new relationship with CBA, which is also giving us a lot more flexibility around our financing. I can also give you an update on the CRCP grant, which is the Department of Industry grant for $2.5 million. Just to refresh your memory, the lion's share of that grant of $1.9 million will go to Greatcell, with $0.6 million to CSIRO, and the involvement of CSR relatively light, just in terms of payment in kind, in terms of giving us access to facilities and those sorts of things, which will complement our scale-up and large coatings program that is commencing. So all signatures for the participants agreement, which concludes the initiation of that grant, have now been received, and that grant and the actions associated with it are now in full swing. So we can move to the next page, please, Eva.
Yes, page 8.
So during the last number of months, we've had some activity, corporate activity, with our strategic shareholder, and it was, of course, as much interest to us as it may be to our shareholders to find out the full implications of the sale of Greatcell to Tronox by Tasnee. That was a $1 billion plus transaction, and Greatcell is essentially the titanium production arm of Tasnee. So, and Tronox is a US company, and that transaction has not yet been concluded, and it's expected to conclude in terms of completion of full transactional due diligence by the end of the year. But it's been very good to get some clarification from Tasnee about their intentions in relation to their shareholding in Greatcell Solar. Of course, some of you who are worldly wise would perhaps make some inquiries as to Tasnee's fortunes in recent years and months, and Tasnee's not unlike a number of Middle East companies who have been somewhat exposed to the fall in the oil price, and of course some of the concessions that it once enjoyed to cheaper oil prices have been removed. So Tasnee has had some of its own financial issues, which explains why it's not necessarily actively involved in the current round of fundraising. But an SPP, of course, is not. It's what we call an anti-dilutionary fundraising, and it's really to get access to our retail shareholder base, which is, of course, what characterises our register. So larger shareholders really don't have an opportunity via an SPP to exercise their financial muscle. But if you read the statement in the 4C, you'll see that Tasnee has every commitment to remain associated with Greatcell Solar and is exploring opportunities not only for how it might work more closely with Greatcell Solar in the future, both in the Middle East, but also in other parts of the world where it has its activities. So we continue to work very closely with Greatcell in a lot of our scale-up activity, both with zirconia and titania, and of course Dr. Rob McIntyre remains an integral member of our bad old habit creeping in there, of our Greatcell Solar board. So it's business as usual in relation to Tasnia and Greatcell as far as we're concerned. And my early interactions with Tronox and those who are involved closely with that transaction suggest that we'll expect that to be smooth sailing, and Tronox as well has taken some interest in our activities. And finally, I guess just to touch on closer arrangements with CBA. Certainly the R&D rebate facility that they've provided Greatcell Solar in recent months has helped smooth some of our funding. It's been very helpful during financial year 2017, which has just concluded, but that will be an ongoing facility to which we have access. It's a very efficient and lowly priced facility. Of course, it's effectively a facility that's backed by federal government credit. Knowing that our R&D rebate check comes in every year towards the end of August or early September, in that regard, it's a AAA security which the banks are very happy to lend against. But CBA, being a Tier 1 bank, can also give us access to other sophisticated, or certainly more sophisticated arrangements that we currently enjoy with our banks, to help us enter our next round of investment with a high degree of confidence. For example, we'll get access to long-term leasing arrangements for equipment that we may be using in our MAD, and of course in the very long term in our pilot line scale up, and that'll put a lot less burden on our shareholders and also on our granting bodies, and give us effectively access to debt which is secured by that equipment. So we welcome this arrangement with CBA, and the other aspect that is worth highlighting at this point of the presentation is the fact that our R&D rebate has been, our estimated check for our activities has actually been upgraded from what we thought was an original 3.6 million to 3.9 million for financial year 2017. So all good in that respect, and I think all our activities for financial year 2018, certainly those activities that I'm aware of, have been provided with an advanced finding, which gives us a great deal of clarity about how we will fund our R&D activities for the next 12 months. Next page, please, Eva. And again.
Page 10.
Indeed. So many of you, if not all, will be familiar with the fact that we have an external technical advisory board chaired by Professor Michael Greatcell, which oversees our quarterly milestone program. This month we reported on an upgrade to our efficiency at the cell level. This is what's known as a stabilised efficiency. It's an efficiency which is measured by the more robust maximum power point tracking methodology, which is inherently lower and more conservative than the IV testing which originally was used for characterisation in this new technology. But Greatcell Solar has been the key driver globally in moving to this more robust testing methodology, which we use both internally and externally in real-world testing, and we're getting, or parts of it at least, all in all providing a more robust and more consistent testing regime, and we're very pleased to report that we've increased our efficiency at the cell level now to a 13%, which was the objective, but of course we exceeded that, and some of our cells were producing close to 14% efficiencies for a very robust architecture, which gives us a great deal of confidence for moving into scaling up and commercialization. So as many of you who will be closely following our technical progress, and it can be sometimes confusing and slightly, and it's reasonably sophisticated, it must be said, we are running two architectures in parallel, one known as the porous carbon design and one known as the PIN design. And both of these are proving worthy competitors of each other, and both marking strong progress, both in terms of stability measurements and also efficiency measurements. And as we move to a larger scale devices, then we need to readdress all those tests to make sure that those characteristics are being replicated on larger and larger devices. This is all a process of de-risking our scale-up, and I know it's sometimes painstakingly slow, sometimes inherently by the nature of the processes that we're undertaking, but sometimes purely because of we need to keep those who are undertaking our external validation alongside us, like CSIRO or NREL in the US and Newport. We need to be all in lockstep, and we're regularly in communication, obviously, particularly with CSIRO, but with NREL and Newport, we're also in regular discussion to make sure that that the protocols that we use are accepted by the testing community, and we also take advice, of course, because a problem shared is a problem solved. So lots of good news there, and we look forward to hitting further milestones in the coming quarters. Moving on to Minimad. Minimad, as I've already touched on, is proving to be an extremely valuable exercise in scale-up, and in its magnitude, moving from modules of 0.01 square meters to modules of close to 0.3 meters squared. It's a scale-up of nearly 30 times, and there are a lot of important tests to be satisfied in doing that successfully. We're very pleased to report that we're getting very good uniformity in our coatings across the entire device, and we're also getting excellent registration and tolerances to make sure that we're getting very high active areas in our larger devices. In our 4C we reported greater than 93%, and I'm reasonably confident that we'll be able to hit 95 to 96 at the Minimad level before we move on to MAD. So this is exceeding our expectation, and very encouraging, because the higher the active area, the higher the effective output of the device. So all particularly good there. We are within a material margin of hitting our initial targets for the Minimad device, and we expect during the next quarter to be able to do that, and at the next quarterly to be able to give confirmation to that. So it's an exciting period for the Minimad, an exciting quarter, should I say, for the Minimad, and looking forward to reporting on that next quarter. In fact, good also to report that the results we're getting from our outdoor testing, real-world testing, which can sometimes vary, and it's of course slightly challenging doing that over the winter months here in Queanbeyan, but when we have had moments of uninterrupted sunshine, we're getting very similar results to what we're getting indoors, and we're also getting high energy yields even during times when there's heavy cloud cover, which goes to our assertions that this technology is very strong relative to first and second generation technologies in terms of having a higher energy yield, which means it performs closer to its nameplate efficiencies than the first and second generation technologies. as you know, silicon, for example, can perform quite poorly at the beginning or towards the end of the day, and also during real-world conditions when there's high cloud cover, haze or pollution and so forth. So very pleasing results in that respect as well. Moving on, please.
Yes, page
Eva.
12.
Yeah,
page 12.
Exactly. We're getting into the swing of things here. Very good. Thank you. So it was very interesting to report the interest coming in from China. We reported an MOU with Jinko, and we'll be sending up one of our leading young engineers to work closely with Jinko in the next week or two. So we've prepared modules for testing with Jinko. I don't feel qualified to speak on behalf of Jinko, and they're a listed company, so I have to be particularly careful about preempting anything they may have to say. But what I can say with some degree of confidence, independently verified by my other meetings in China over the last number of months, is that the Chinese market is, of course, a world leader, not only in the manufacture of panels, but also the installation of panels over the last 12 months. China's been really driving the uptake globally. If I can refresh your memory, during calendar 2016, installations were 46% up on the previous year. So I think some of the projections at the moment are reasonably conservative globally, where we talk about 10 to 15% per annum over the next 10 years. All very encouraging. But the headwind that the Chinese manufacturers are facing, particularly as the Chinese economy becomes more and more normalized with Western economies, is the fact that subsidies are being withdrawn not only to the producers but also to the consumers. So if we take ourselves back to 2011 through to 2013, when we all know that that PV solar had quite a tough time because of the glut, particularly in Europe, when a number of the manufacturers went into bankruptcy, that was because of big changes in government policy. And the Chinese are starting to withdraw their support for take-up now that take-up has got serious momentum. So that may slow demand in China. But also, we also know that the Chinese manufacturers have always enjoyed very, very cheap electricity prices. And electricity is a particularly important input in the manufacture of silicon panels. Not so much in third generation technology, but certainly in first generation technology. And as manufacturers face rising cost of inputs, then it is inevitable that the cost of first generation panels rise, or at least falls no further, or if it does, you can expect that plateauing effect that is already very evident in the falling prices. So really the Chinese manufacturers are starting to cast a wider net and looking to the new technologies. And as we were very happy to report through the work we've done with ARENA, particularly in preparation for some of our upcoming grant applications, the projections for this technology are extremely encouraging. At the panel level, we're talking about at scale potentially producing panels for as little as 25 US cents per watt peak. And that should translate into a levelized cost of electricity as little as 4 cents per kilowatt hour. These are particularly exciting numbers given the projected versatility of this technology. A technology, of course, which can address many different climates rather than the ideal climates, which of course are particularly favourable to silicon and in which silicon performs very well, but there will be limitations irrespective of the climatic conditions for silicon to be able to compete with the economics that third generation PSC PV promises to deliver. So that's very exciting, and it's something which keeps driving us on every day. And it's, of course, it's this validation we get when we provide those sorts of numbers to ARENA, which gives us confidence that there's not only interest from the largest producers globally, but also from government in Australia, increasingly in other countries like China and the UK, and potentially in places like Turkey, which have been long-term observers of the emergence of this technology. Next slide, please, Eva.
Yes, 13.
So, yeah, I've touched on Ginkgo. That's a long-term evaluation program. It's also important to note that it's not an exclusive relationship. So we're in the position to entertain inquiries from other companies, not only in glass but also in steel, where companies like Ginkgo have no demonstrable expertise. And it's extremely early days at the moment, but our results in Science in particular are starting to attract, after some delay, some renewed interest in the potential solar enablement of steel substrates, where we believe in the long term there's an excellent possibility to bring solar to an entirely undiscovered substrate, and where we believe, at least to our knowledge, there's not a lot of competitive pressure, if any at all. So all quite exciting there. Just to round off in relation to some of our other relationships, we speak to VDL on a weekly basis, and VDL remains at the forefront of automation and continuous processing, and VDL have now moved on to into some feasibility work on pilot line work, which ultimately will succeed our MAD work. And it's good to be doing some of this in parallel rather than doing it in sequence, because that again should help ensure that we don't get any more delays to our commercialisation schedule. The less said about Nestle and Turkey, the better, I guess, other than the fact is we continue our efforts there. It's a strong, high-level line of communication, and we remain conservatively optimistic about that ultimately translating into a similar type of project scenario to what we have here in Australia. Finally, just onto the financials, we've reported our cash balances at the end of the quarter, which was approximately $1 million. We've drawn down another $800,000 subsequently to that from our CBA facility, and that is an ongoing process at the end of each quarter. So not a lot to add there, other than the fact now that we've received approval across all participants in our CRCP grant, we have further access to the monies in that $2.5 million grant, which again shores up our balance sheet. And I did reflect as a final comment on the financials for the year relative to 2016, and I noted that all key metrics had improved. So receipts were up 13% for year on year. We're up 13%. Our spending on R&D year on year was down 17%. Our spending on staff costs was down 6%, and our corporate overhead was down 7%. So we are running a very tight ship, and during that time we've maintained the same headcount in our staff. So really, the monies that our shareholders give to us to spend to take the company forward are being used more and more efficiently each year. So that gives me great pleasure to be able to report that. So that finishes the presentation. Thanks for your attention, and over to you, Eva, to now take some questions.
Yes, thanks so much, Richard. Sie haben die Möglichkeit, jetzt Fragen einzustellen im Moderatoren-Chat. You have the possibility to ask questions via the chat. Wir haben auch schon einige Fragen bekommen. We already received some questions via the chat. Ich würde ganz gerne anfangen mit einigen Fragen, die ich bereits im Vorfeld erhalten habe. I would like to start with some questions I already received beforehand. So Richard, the first question would be, why have the research and development costs have been cut by over 50%?
I'm not exactly sure where that question's coming from. I'm not aware of them having been cut 50%. I've just touched at the conclusion of the presentation on the costs being down approximately 7%. The fact that our R&D rebate has increased during that period is that we've become more and more aware that some of our overhead is now attributable to R&D and therefore qualifies for rebate. Now that not only applies to the benefit of the current year, but we've actually have a number of revisions, and this is based on advice from more than one accounting firm that we use. We use 2 or 3 accounting firms for various, not only for our audited annual results, but also specifically for the specialist role of analysing our annual R&D rebate claim. But we've discovered that some of our overhead, for example, will qualify, and that will allow us to make claims going back to 2012 for claims somewhere in the vicinity of an additional $500,000. So that's another, it's certainly not in the bank, but our advice tells us that it's likely to be treated favourably by the Australian Taxation Office. So that's another $500,000 that's likely to come into our cash position over the next 2 to 3 months at the very most. So that's really the main features of our R&D spend that I can touch on. In terms of having halved, I wish they may have halved, but we really are translating a lot of our R activity into D activity, and it still costs money. And I would say we get great results from our spend, certainly relative to equivalent companies in other countries, where they would typically enjoy greater access to venture capital, for example. So I'm always very pleased that our numbers are typically in the low quartile of spend for companies of similar size globally, and also that our ratio of corporate spend to R&D spend is as low as it is.
Mm-hmm. So thanks so much. 2 further questions I received beforehand regarding Jinko Solar. I know you already mentioned Jinko Solar, but maybe a deeper view. The first question regarding Jinko Solar was, will Jinko Solar collaborate and pay regarding research and development? And the second question I received beforehand is it possible to give us a deeper understanding of the possible collaboration with Jinko Solar in China?
Well, I'm sure everyone would like to know the detail of that. As I said to you earlier on, Jinko in English, Jinko in German. Everyone would like to know more detail. What we've told the stock exchange is this is a technology evaluation. Jinko have a close relationship with NTU, or Nanyang Technology University of Singapore, the most significant technology university in Singapore. So between the 3 of us, we're in a collaboration of technology evaluation. It's very early days. And transitioning to this technology, should it prove to be successful, is not going to be overnight. I think we all recognise that there are billions of dollars invested in silicon technology, that until this technology can prove beyond doubt that it is a worthy competitor, that there will be a place for silicon technology for manufacture and for take-up, particularly in climates that are suited for this for silicon technology. So while this technology is obviously disruptive, if it can halve the cost of panel manufacture, there's still time to achieve that. So we respect companies like Jinko, and we welcome companies like Jinko, which of course would provide an enormous gateway into the Chinese market should that relationship prove to be successful. Of course, that needs to be negotiated on its merits, and that negotiation would happen after an evaluation period. So it's very early days, and of course we always have to respect that Jinko itself is listed on the US exchange, and if Jinko has anything to say, then Jinko can say it itself, and I'm not authorised to speak on behalf of Jinko.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much. And the further question I received beforehand is, what is the current interest of Tasni in Greatcell?
Well, I think I've already answered that. Tasni holds approximately 30% of Greatcell Solar. Tasni sent us a letter of comfort after the sale of Greatcell to Tronox, and Tasni is retaining its ownership. Tasni is a company in transition. It has been affected by things like the change in the oil price and so forth, but Tasni is still a very, very significant and successful company, particularly in the Middle East, and we enjoy our relationship with Tasni, and Tasni is still exploring ways how it might work more closely with us for the introduction of this technology at a later date into some of the markets where it has a significant influence. So the bond is strong, the lines of communication are strong, and as I say, in this particular capital raising, for example, where everyone's limited, irrespective of the size of their shareholding, including me, to a maximum of $15,000 worth of investment, this is really a shareholding where we reach out to our retail shareholders because of their interest in our progress. And I'd like to also make it known, while I've got the floor, is that from my personal perspective, and having recently published a cleansing notice on the stock exchange, it's my intention during the month of August to increase my shareholding beyond my $15,000 evaluation, or sorry, my $15,000 allocation under the SPP, because my view of the company at the moment, given the various relationships that I see emerging, both at the commercial level and also at the grant body level, that they're very encouraging. I certainly have no more information than what I'm relaying to the shareholders this evening, but I am now in a position, given we've moved on from July, which was a blackout period for share purchases, I'm now in the position to purchase more shares, and it's my intention to do so. So, and I'm sure if Tasni was in a better position financially, that it would do so. It certainly has no intention to divest its share per the communication received from its CEO, Mutlaq Al-Morshed.
There's maybe the last question I received beforehand regarding if the whole management and technical senior management will participate in the capital rise.
Certainly, if you read the share purchase plan booklet, you will see that all directors have indicated their intention to participate in the share purchase plan. As far as the individual staff go, I think we will get some degree of participation, but most of our young engineers and chemists, young families with lots of kids and many competing financial pressures, so I wouldn't necessarily rely on them for a huge contribution, but what you should be looking for is and also a lot of the employees are not across all the activities of the company. That's the responsibility of the directors, and the directors unanimously will be supporting the capital raising.
Thanks so much. And directly a question here out of the audience is, will Tasnee take part in the SPP?
No, I've already answered that, Eva, so let's move on.
Oh, okay, sorry. Then there is one, does the update of commercialization schedule result in a delay of 3, 6, or 12 months?
Well, I think I've given some clarity and colour around that. I mean, in moving it forward 12 months, we're being conservative, and when we ultimately take receipt of new equipment, which we expect has around a 6-month lead time, then we'll probably be in a better position to give clarification on a quarterly basis about the true shift to the right of the commercialisation schedule. That's particularly in relation to the glass, which, as you know, leads our commercialisation schedule. On the positive side, of course, I have flagged to the market in this conversation that moving steel in sync or metals in sync with glass is being particularly conservative, and given the access we have to equipment already at Alliance, it probably means for confirmation at a later date that the 2-year prototyping that is in the current commercialisation schedule may be able to be condensed into a shorter period of perhaps, let's say 1.5 years. But again, when that's confirmed, we will inform the market. I think it's always wise to err on the side of conservatism to avoid coming back to the market with any further delays. And I don't expect any further delays to be reported to the market. And what I'm suggesting to you at the moment, if anything, things will improve.
Thanks so much. And Sebastian is asking, when will there be some presentation regarding the metal project?
That's a good question. I'm eager myself to visit the metal project. I'm across all the reports, of course, but there's nothing better than having a first-hand look at the metals project, and it is really moving along very impressively at the moment. So I expect to visit both Manchester and Eindhoven over the next quarter. My CTO, Dr. Damien Milliken, has actually been in both those locations over the past month. So we're, of course, as a board, right across technical development, but I'll also enjoy catching up with staff over the next month. And when I do that, that'll give me the insight and the knowledge to be able to report greater detail about the metals project in the next quarterly. There's also, as I said, I touched on, just more generally, interest emerging for metals as a substrate. And who knows, something positive might develop there over the next quarter as well. So fingers crossed.
A further question from Happy Man. He's asking, when do you expect the certification for Mini-MET or, if necessary, MET?
Well, thank you, Happy Man. It's always good to read you on Hot Copper, and thank you for your support. I think he's referring specifically to accreditation and testing, which comes really at the end of the project. And accreditation and testing is inherently time-consuming. So we have an important milestone to meet at the end of August, and also a longer-term milestone in the Mini-MAD project, which we will to some extent be running in parallel with the MAD project by the end of this half of this year, which effectively will be moving again to yet higher efficiencies again. So I expect we'll be delivering on a rolling basis, be delivering reports in relation to meeting various milestones before we send those panels off to Newport over the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay, thanks. I think this already answers the question from Walter, which is quite similar. He's asking, when do you expect standard certification externally? But I think this
very similar question, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the question on everyone's lips, and I certainly can't put a date on it because at the moment I don't have sufficient information to be able to pinpoint a date. But certainly it's expected to be within the commercialisation schedule as published on the stock exchange. We certainly can't move from prototyping to pilot line manufacture without having achieved accreditation. That's our principal milestone, is to have sufficient confidence in the MAD project before we move on to pilot line manufacture, and that will come through accreditation.
Mm. A further question from Bruce. He's asking, do you anticipate any further future technologies competitors in this space?
Well, never say never, I guess, but we've just attended the biggest conference in third generation PV technology in the US last month, and we're feeling quite confident, having come back from that conference, that Greatcell Solar is definitely leading the world, not only at the R level but also the D level. We're working at a scale which is unmatched by any academic institutions globally, and we see no evidence of any significant commercialisation threat at the moment. Of course, our visibility is quite good from attending events like conferences. Our visibility into China is perhaps not as good, but then again, I don't think we've been attracting the attention we're attracting at the moment if this level of sophistication in third generation was available in China. So we also take some encouragement from that.
Thanks so much. Vincent is asking, are technical issues a factor at all in the slow progress of the 2 federal government grants you mentioned?
There's limited clarity I can give around federal grant bodies. In the long-term history of Australian grant making, you'll be well aware that some of the major grant bodies have been the subject of political debate because the Labor and the Liberal governments don't necessarily have a common view about the importance of scaling up technologies in competition to traditional fossil fuels. Those debates have now been resolved in the positive, and we feel much more confident about the ability for institutions like ARENA to conduct their business unaffected by political debate. So that's very encouraging, but it's only relatively early days, and one of the great challenges, of course, that all grant bodies face in funding new technology is their own ability to understand the new technology, because it is inherently sophisticated, and as a pioneer technology, whether it's renewables or information technology or any pioneer technology, requires the availability of experts not only locally but also internationally to assist in the evaluation of that. Now, we've seen great evidence of that progressing recently, so again that gives us a lot of confidence that over time that our technology will attract the interest not only of governments here in Australia but also internationally in other markets that we seek to do business. And of course we took an excellent amount of comfort from the CRCP grant of $2.5 million that we received from the Department of Industry earlier this year. So yeah, there are great signs, but I can't comment with enormous clarity about how that may proceed, but the trend is particularly encouraging.
A further question from Happy Man. In which time frame do you expect the forming of a joint venture? Are there other possible industrial partners in China?
Oh, absolutely. I think it would be silly to hitch one's fortunes purely to one potential commercialization partner. That's just sensible business, and I don't think anyone would be surprised to hear me say that. So we always have a plan B and a plan C. Certainly in countries like Australia or China, where there are a number of participants. In countries like Turkey, for example, that's less of a possibility because it's lesser developed and there are fewer pockets of interest. So we are more reliant on well-established and individual relationships, and that is why we continue to review relationships like Nestle DSC, but why we continue to go back to them and have optimism about their potential, because not only is that a long-standing relationship, but we also note that Nestle DSC has a close relationship with the Ministry of Science, Industry and Technology in Turkey. So we do various forms of external validation for all our potential commercialization partners, and if they satisfy us, then we continue to persevere. And you know, it's always a challenge because there are many competing companies looking for federal funding, and not enough money to go around. So it's highly competitive, and as I say, typically spoils to the victor.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. And Dirk would like to know, can you tell us something about the developments of the IFASEC in the current year?
Well, IFASEC, that's a good question. We haven't touched on that for a while, so very happy to comment on that. There are a number of developments that have occurred, all reasonably favourable since we announced our relationship with Uporto and IFASEC. Now this, we have an option to acquire that technology, and that technology is being scaled to larger devices. And our payment into that collaboration is only triggered by meeting various milestones. So as milestones get hit, then payments are triggered. It's fair to say that they have encountered some degree of scaling issues, but that's been at no cost to us. And of course, in the meantime, we've actually discovered and accessed alternative sealing technology in terms of much improved sealants, epoxy sealants and so forth, which have survived long-dated weathering, testing, and are a much higher specification than the epoxy type sealants that were available as little as 3 or 4 years ago. So all in all, sealing and encapsulation as an issue for us in terms of achieving the stability and durability, which is a challenge for all PV solar, has improved immensely over the last few years. So we have a number of options at our fingertips, and we remain quietly confident that the IFASEC technology will scale to mini-MAD and MAD devices, but you know, it really does have a lag factor as it tries to keep up with the investment that we have in making those modules. So all in all, the outlook for that aspect of the technical challenges of scaling is in pretty good hands.
Okay, thanks so far. We still have plenty of questions, but we have to come to an end. Do you have time for one further question?
Why not?
Richard?
Why not?
Maybe the last question is from Bruce. Do you see this technology in the household, rooftop market, solar farm market, commercial high-rise building market, strength and weakness?
Well, I think the technology will be able to be applied to all of those potential applications. The principal driver of decisions which determines early stage production is management of risk. So it's clearly easier to put this new technology into applications like solar farms initially rather than to put it on billion-dollar skyscrapers. So that's a general thought from the board. But ultimately, over time, as the technology demonstrates its durability, then we expect to take it into higher and higher type risk applications. I will be particularly interested to see how Tesla proceeds with its intended rooftop tiles over the next few months. I wouldn't like to preempt how they will perform, and I of course wish them well, because we always admire technical progress, whether it's in-house or progress of our competitors. But I would encourage you to read the fine print and to follow it very closely, because we've not really heard any performance claims from Tesla in relation to their rooftop tiles, and I strongly suspect that their commercial viability will be highly suspect. And happy to be proved wrong, of course, but let's wait and see.
Ganz herzlichen Dank. Thanks a lot. We have to come to an end. Wir müssen jetzt leider zu einem Ende kommen. Wir konnten nicht alle Fragen beantworten. We couldn't answer all of the questions. Aber ich werde die Fragen an Greatcell Solar schicken. I will send the open questions to Greatcell Solar. Und wir stellen dann sicher, dass sie im Nachgang noch beantwortet werden. And we will make sure that they will be answered afterwards. So Richard, thanks so much for the moment. And the last words are for you.
I'd just like to thank everyone for their ongoing interest, and I'd also like to just mention that we've put out a guide, particularly for the benefit of our overseas shareholders, to help them to, if they'd like to participate in the share purchase plan. We've had a lot of inquiries from overseas since the announcement of the SPP, and to make it a little easier for them, we've put out a guide to help. So by all means access that through our website, and also of course Eva, you can perhaps assist in that as well. And if that doesn't help, then we're more than happy to take inquiries via email to direct you in appropriately, so you can participate. The offer's open from the 1st to the 18th of August, and we welcome your participation. So thanks everyone for your interest, and of course at the very latest I look forward to speaking to you at the end of this quarter.